Friends, fans, and fine folk, grab your drinks and snacks and come on down to the jousting tournament. I mean, the behind the screens. I mean, the starting soon. I mean, the short rest. There we go. With this short rest with me and my friend Kefa.
Hey everyone who has definitely not seen me before at this point. How are you
Exactly.
doing?
It's definitely not the second take. It's been a while since we had to do second take shit for this. Good to see you, Kevin. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me.
It's been a pleasure. So for people who don't know, I usually like to start with like a bit of a brief. Who are you? What's what who are people tuning in to see right now?
My name's Kevin Fannin. I'm known as Kefa in the tabletop gaming community. I am a professional miniature painter, and I also own a small RPG publishing company located right near downtown Indianapolis. So if you've ever been to Gen Con, you've been within a stone's throw of my little studio here.
Hell yeah! I didn't know that that's where you were located. We should actually catch up next time at Gen Con. I was at the last two.
Yeah, yeah.
I was at Gen Con this year and the year before as well. Although this coming year might be the first year in a while that I haven't actually been to Gen Con. We'll see.
So I
It's still
teach
working.
miniature painting at Gen Con. So usually I'm not like on the floor at all. Every 3 hours I have a 2.5 hour class and then 30 minutes to reset, run to the restroom and hit it again. But it's a big important stop for me business wise. So I gotta
Hell
do
yeah.
that grind. I was in town for 4 days.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a huge convention as well. I'll definitely try and hit you up for that next time I'm at Gen Con because there's a whole bunch of my grey minis of shame in a big bag essentially of things that I've been meaning to get around to painting for several years and never actually do. I should drop by one of your classes. So
Yeah.
you're in the TTRPG community in a variety of ways, really, as we all are. Really, like can't
Mm.
really survive with doing just the one thing. So where did you get into this? How did all your interests with TTRPGs begin?
All right. So I started out just wanting to paint my models so that they look good on the tabletop playing Warhammer Fantasy way back in the
Right.
day. I really loved the idea of the big armies clashing together, and the fact that there were fantasy armies, with elves and goblins and stuff, was like even better for me. So I really got into that when I was young and painting my troops just to have them look nice on the table. And going to tournaments, I started realizing that they had awards for like best painted hero, best painted monster, things
Nice.
like that. So I started dialing in on, like maybe I just paint this one really good, right? And then
Yeah,
found
yeah,
out that
yeah,
I,
yeah.
I really did have a passion for the artistic side of things. Um, and it wasn't
Nice.
until later I found some Facebook groups that were really helpful in like helping me grow. I was painting with poor technique for a long time.
Right.
So the positives of that were that I developed some like brush control and things. So when I learned techniques, I took to them really, really quickly.
Right, yeah, yeah, yeah. Like learning with weights on. Like you've been doing it,
Yes, yeah,
you've been doing
the
it a
way
harder way than you needed to, and then you
sure.
pick up the better
Uh,
technique, and it all becomes easier.
so I started painting commissions in order just to pay for my hobbies.
Uh huh.
And
Cause yeah,
every
mini
time I
painting ain't cheap, right?
write, that paint, brushes, nice
Yeah.
models, display stuff. And then when I got busy, I just started asking for more money. Like every time, I think I
Mm,
started out at $6 a model painting commissions, and now
right.
I paint D&D characters for like $150 a piece.
Yeah.
So I just whenever I get busy, I ask for more, and if they say yes, I'm like, that's my new price, and I just
Exactly. That's exactly how it works. People often ask me like, "I'm just starting out as a dungeon master for hire. Like, how do I know what I'm worth?" I'm like, you have to choose that.
yeah.
You have to choose what you're worth. Everything, not just like weird ephemeral services like ours. Everything is literally just worth what somebody's willing to pay for it. Like milk is only worth what somebody's willing to pay for it. If you went to the supermarket and they tried charging $10 a liter, then they probably wouldn't get nearly as many people buying it, and so they'd end up making a loss, and so they'd have to lower it again. It's like the Mona Lisa would only be worth what somebody was willing to pay for it. It's the same with literally everything, and so you just have to kind of work that out through, unfortunately, trial and error. Sometimes, like you, sometimes will pitch yourself at a level where you, after doing the work, you go, oh man, I really made a loss. That I put in way more hours. I ended up working for like cents an hour there.
And at the same time, you have to be okay with people telling you no, right?
Hmm,
You want to price yourself to a
abs-
place where some people say no
absolutely.
and some people say yes.
Yeah, you need to
Uh,
find that because you it always reminds me of like when I was in Thailand and they have a very battering sort of economy there, and like you'd ask for a shirt or something at a stall and they'd be like however many baht, 700 baht, and you'd go, oh, I don't know, maybe 500, and they go, yep. And they immediately take it, and you're like, "Oh, okay. I could have started way lower." So
yeah,
you don't want to pitch yourself at a point where everybody's just like, "Yep, straight away," because you're like, "Okay, I could actually be asking for more than that." And at the same time, you don't want to go like, "Oh, 10,000 baht," and then they just like not even
right.
entertaining the idea. You gotta find where your worth is, and that is often just through trial and error. You get asked for a thing, you go, oh, I'm very busy, so I'll say that yes, I could do it for $200, and then they can go like, oh, it's a bit steep, but yeah, I'll pay it, and then you know, okay, this is about where I'm at the moment,
Yeah.
and it's a constantly evolving thing.
So just going to Gen Con, entering painting competitions, I started out the very bottom of the case for these display competitions, and I didn't even know how bad I was at paint. Like I thought mine was as good as anything else in the case. It's like I didn't
Mm.
know what I didn't know at that
Mm-hmm,
stage.
mm-hmm.
But as I learned and interacted with other board game companies and the painters that work there, a couple people were kind enough to take me under their wing and show me some more advanced things,
Mm-hmm.
and through interacting with these other companies, I became a little bit of a board game enthusiast as well, and volunteered to work at a magazine called Board Game Monthly. We were very short lived. I think we only maybe had 3 issues. It was like a free online zine type of deal. But I was doing board game reviews, I was doing painting tutorials, and I learned a little bit about editing, like copy editing, and that's just a little tiny side
Mm-hmm.
quest that I went on that paid off in a big way down the road.
Yeah, apparently so.
So years later, I've been painting, commissions consistently for 5 6 years.
Mm.
Uh, when the pandemic hit and the world shut down, I decided it's time to start streaming so I could keep business growing. That's when I met you, and you were very kind to me, always rating my channel. When you were done for the day, I was waking up in the morning,
Yeah,
so it was
yeah,
perfect
it
time.
worked out perfectly.
And
That's how I met most of my community. Like I it started out because I've got the Viva la Dirt League audience, so I had a bit of a jumping off point there, and so they raided into me when I was starting to stream. So I ended up with like an audience pretty good right from the beginning, which I'm super grateful for. But then after raiding into them a couple times, like after a few weeks of streaming and just raiding back and forth between them, I was like, this is very circular, very incestuous almost. Like there's no expansion here. There's no, and so I put some work into like sitting down on Twitch and like going through channels that are on around the same time that I'm finishing, and finding a bunch of potential D&D channels and mini painting channels and art D&D art channels and all sorts of other things that are tangentially related. And there's quite a few that I would sit down and sort of lurk in for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and the ones that I found that I was able to just catch myself enjoying and just like being there and chilling and stuff, I'd be like, okay, I'll give this person a go. So it was especially in those early days, it was a very conscious decision who I was raiding, and it was never a doubt that you'd be a channel that I'd be happy to raid into, somebody that I would
it really
uh,
meant a lot to me. I
happy to
mean, the
put
whole world was
my own name to. Yeah.
yeah, and you've always had a much larger audience, so every time you rated in, it was like a gift for the day. It was like it really made it was. I've always thought very highly of you, and I've always remembered
Thank you.
that kind.
It's
Uh,
very kind of you to say so.
so while I was
So before we move to like your streaming days, let's go back even further. You said that you got your start with painting because of painting your own, just out of necessity of painting your own minis for your own tabletop wargaming. Was it? Did you say it was Warhammer that you were playing at the time?
Hammer Fantasy
What
back in the day.
what got you into playing that? Have you always enjoyed tabletop roleplay, tabletop miniatures games? Like,
Actually, never even heard of it before, and I watched the movie Braveheart and seeing
okay,
those armies. I was
yeah,
it
yeah,
was as a little kid, I was like, this is some cool shit, right?
yeah,
Uh, so a kid from school brought like a little like 2-page pamphlet, like something you would pick up for free at the game
yeah.
store, and it had Warhammer Fantasy in it, and it showed
Love
like a
it.
table, trees, and a river, and there was like wood elves and goblins fighting
Yeah.
each other. And it just instantly, I was like, oh, I want to play this game. Like I absolutely, I started making plans, like
It
recruiting my
tickled you. It
friends.
tickled the exact right part of you to be like, this is the thing. I love
Yeah,
that.
yeah, absolutely. And I remember spending a summer with my brother walking the neighborhood, washing cars for $1 a piece, and which was very low even then. But like people would get $5 or $10. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
yeah. You say a
Um,
dollar, and then people are more likely to be like, hey, they're doing a good job, and they're not being
yeah.
greedy. Yeah.
So that was able to do that for a summer to go get my first Warhammer books and first minis and
How old
start
are we
painting.
talking? Was this like mid-teens or something?
12 or 13, probably.
Right. Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
So you were already into it and knowing that this is something you wanted, and there was a local game store you could go and get it from.
Oh, I had to like get my grandpa to drive me all the way to the north side of Indianapolis, and
Hell yeah. Did he?
so
Did he? Was he like super supportive, or did he not understand like why this kid would want to go all this way just to get some plastic figures?
yeah, he definitely didn't. He definitely didn't get it, but he was pretty good about like if that's what you really want to do, then all right.
Yeah, this is what you want to spend your money on. Are you sure? Yeah, nice. What do you remember your first pieces? Do you remember your first set and such?
So, despite how badly I wanted to play fantasy, the friends that I collected, to try to get excited
Uh-huh.
about this, they were the 40K stuff looks super better. So the first boxes that I bought and painted were actually like Space Wolves.
Nice.
But even then, it was just like I really wanted to be playing the fantasy version,
Uh-huh.
and then it wasn't until maybe a couple years later I picked up like some skeletons or zombies for vampire counts, and my first army was a vampire count.
Nice. And did you actually manage to find the time to play routinely with your friends back in the day?
Yeah, not with those. Like it took a couple of years probably to get the armies and get space set up. I
Mm-hmm.
remember um, my girlfriend at the time in school. We set up a table in her basement, and her and I and her little brother would play down there and paint minis in this dirty, dusty basement. Years later, when I was married, we had two 4 foot by 8 foot game tables in our loft, and we
Wow.
played. That was our weekend. Sometimes we would just set up, a giant battle and take breaks and go have dinner or whatever and
Hell
play for
yeah.
just each day and spread it out over the weekend and have a big battle. Um, so yeah,
I've never had the chance to get into like those huge uh, miniatures games, those huge battle games. So I don't. It's like a world related to it's so closely related to the stuff that I do, but still so foreign to me. Kind of like lapping and stuff as well, like just so foreign. Uh, is it something that lends itself to tabletop role play as well? Do you find that you're like acting out? Did you find yourself drawn to any of that role play side of things, or no?
not at that time. No, actually, like I had a pretty contentious relationship with role playing games because, like, growing up, Dungeons and Dragons was like my dad's thing, you know,
Right.
and him and I were not close for many many years. So I kind of pushed all that away from me for
Right.
like until my early 30s, really.
Right.
Uh, I just wasn't interested in it. And they're like, that's
Uh,
dad shit. I don't do that. And then started realizing like well, I found my own thing right with this Warhammer.
yeah.
I was painting minis, and then come to find like my dad was also a miniature painter, right?
Right.
So we
Right.
like we're a lot more alike than I wanted to admit when I was a teenager. That's for sure. Um,
Usually the case, right?
Yeah, so like sometimes I kick myself for waiting, 30 years to start playing Dungeons and Dragons. But I'm glad I found it when I did at the right time.
Yeah, yeah. It's not about how late you found it. It's about how long you've got left to keep playing it. So you found the Warhammer stuff. Did you move into other miniatures painting as well, or was it basically just like you focused most of your attention on Warhammer for the early days?
Warhammer was, I mean, it's a pretty expensive hobby.
Oh yeah.
So anytime I was investing, it was like you had to keep buying more troops for the army. And then since my then wife at the time, we were building multiple armies. Like she had one and I had one at
Right.
least,
Yeah.
right? So it was like I bought her something, I need to buy me something, and then I'm painting all of it. So
That
yeah,
took up
at the
most of your.
time, not a lot of
And was it
different
all purchase stuff? You weren't making anything at the time. You weren't branching into like making your own terrain or anything.
terrain. Yes, I made some old terrain out of like paper towel tubes and paper mache. I made some little
Mm.
orc huts that my local game store still has to this day.
Oh,
They're probably
nice.
50 now, and then
Hell yeah.
maybe almost 20 years old because I made them before my daughter was born, and she's 19. So
Damn.
yeah, they're still
That's
sitting on a
that's
shelf.
that's. I mean, that's impressive on both counts that you made it durable enough that it would last that time, and also that they've looked after it well enough that it's
It's
still.
just cardboard and glue, man, and some paper towels. But
Well, they've obviously
I
looked
also
after it then.
I used some like ceiling tiles and cut them and made hills and like glued them together and painted them and put grass on it.
Yeah,
So they were flat enough for the troops to stand, but they still were elevation.
that's
So
cool.
yeah,
That's cool. You
all
ever?
kinds of craft.
Did you ever start looking into like making your own minis or anything as well? Like, did you ever think about like injection molding or resin printing or anything like that around that time?
Not at that at that time. I wasn't thinking that any of this could be a profession, right?
Mm,
Like in my head, I was like, oh, it'd be cool to have a game store,
yeah.
right? But every game store owner I've ever talked to is like, that's a good way to turn a large fortune into a small fortune is to open a game store.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
So
was kind of discouraged from that at every turn, and it was just kind of like a hobby for many years.
yeah.
Um,
Do you
but
so with your mini painting, do you do a lot of mini customization as well? Like this guy has got a hammer, but I want him to have an axe, so I'm gonna chop off the top of the hammer, replace it with this
yeah,
other thing. Yeah.
so I don't like. I'm not the most skilled at it, but I am quite proud of some of the pieces that I've done. Like there's a dwarf that had two axes in his hands, and we cut one of them off and sculpted a mug, and I even sculpted like little bubbles and suds on the mug,
Nice.
and that was for a commission. And I was sad that I had to give that one to a client because I knew as soon as I made it, it was a home run.
Hell yeah. I mean that's awesome. I always love that with my friend Spidey, who does a lot of my painting for me. Because he's a fantastic painter, like next level stuff, and he doesn't like do it for a living. It's not his main job. He's an animator, but he's just so good at it, and he takes such pride in it. And it started out for him in a very similar way. Like it was just out of necessity. He just hates playing. He just hates playing games with grey resin minis and stuff, and so he wants it actually painted properly, and so he paints them up, and he does a fantastic job of it. He always goes as far as like adding extra stuff to it than just paints, like adding the hot glue to make like little strings and strands of this and that and the other, or things that are dripping out of mouths, or like slimy bits and like bits that make it look wet, like different glosses and stuff. He's got a lot of Star Wars minis as well, and he because we play some Star Wars miniatures, and like always, if one of them's got a lightsaber, he's making sure to put the extra glow of the lightsaber on the he goes to that level, but it's always funny to me that he does that stuff and then complains about how, like about the fact that it's not really the thing that he wants to be doing. I'm like, you put so much passion into
Yeah,
it. Yeah, and he's always changing things up as well. Like he gave me some recently. He goes, "I'm not going to use these again. I used them for one thing that I needed it for, and now I don't need them anymore. So do you want some elephant people, some Loxodon minis?" I was like, "Hell yeah, I'll take some Loxodons." And he goes, "Oh, I didn't have a Loxodon, so I took something else. He took some other thing that kind of had the right body, and then got an elephant head from something else, and just kind of like grafted them together." It's some pretty great stuff.
I see some people in chat asking about my miniature work.
Yeah, let's start some showing it off as we discuss it, eh? What
Best way to do
do you still have like your earliest minis? Did you like sentimentally keep like the very first things you ever got and first things you ever painted?
I've moved so many times as a kid and as an adult. Like I
A
at
lot of
some
them got
point
lost.
keeping like the competition pieces that were important to me and everything else I kind of let go of.
What was
But
your
yeah, I do have a good.
what was the thing that was like bringing in the money? Because you said it was an expensive hobby. Like when what was your earliest like career? What was your choice of like the direction you were going to be going as a youngster? Did you make a
As a like, painter or
no outside of that? Like in your real world, like
yeah,
what's the thing that
listen,
provides the money for the hobby?
I've been I've been a dreamer my whole life. So when I was in high school, I was like, I'm gonna be a professional wrestler. That's what I'm gonna do with my life. I'm gonna
Nice. Yeah.
my car and eat potatoes and I did that at the local level for like 10 years, and it doesn't pay. Like, if I made money, it was because I was hawking T-shirts during intermission.
Right.
Um, but so in the meantime, I worked at a factory. I started there when I was 19 years old, and I was just fired from there in September. So 19 years I worked there.
Shit, dude.
The whole time thinking this is just some shit I got to do until you know my my real life starts, right? So it was it was a tough pill to swallow, but at the same time, I was like, I've wanted out of this place for so long. Like now they're just forcing me to adapt and make a change, and
Yeah.
it's gonna be for the better. Like I've been through some pretty tough things, over the last couple
Yeah.
of years, and uh, I'm okay. You know what I mean? So
Uh-huh.
I was like, even this new challenge, I'm
Yeah.
going to be fine.
It's
And
it's 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 pretty useful sometimes to get that sort of reminder of like, oh, look what I've survived. I'm doing fine. Like
yeah,
this is yeah. Similarly, last couple of years have had some really ups and downs. I think I'd say that 2023 especially was both some of the best times of my life and some of the hardest times of my life. It was like a real roller coaster. Like it was a real challenge at times. And I've come out with a different outlook. I can look at things and go like, oh, I'm enjoying things for the moment a lot more now. I'm recognizing just how quickly life can change and how much life can change. I can look back at 5 years ago and 10 years ago and 15 years ago and see three different Roberts entirely and go like, oh, I'm a different person now than I was. And I can then project that forward and go, I'm going to be a different person in 5 years, and I'm going to be a different person again in 10 years. And I don't know what that person's going to want or what they're going to value most. I can make what I assume to be smart decisions based on the knowledge I've got at the moment, but I'm not going to worry. I'm not going to worry about doing everything right for future Robert. I'm going to live for present Robert. I'm going to plan for the future, but I'm going to live for today. Um, and
that's
and I'm going to be okay. And like I'm going to keep following the things that I enjoy doing. And if it means that at any point, for whatever reason, the thing that I'm enjoying doing isn't something that's bringing in money, then so be it. I'll keep doing it as a hobby, and I'll go and get a job at a supermarket. Like it's a life that that gives me a lot more comfort and pleasure to sort of live in that way as well. But yeah, it's tough to actually go through those turbulent moments.
for sure. I mean, like we're choosing to be optimistic about things. I remember like the day I got let go at work and I came home. Obviously that's a tough bit of news to bring home,
Mm.
and my partner was here and she was just like, I hope this doesn't sound the wrong way, but I'm so fucking excited to see what we do next, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I like I needed that optimism and that positivity in that moment, and I was just like, okay, good, like I
Yeah.
think this is a thing too, and I just embraced it fully.
Yeah, hell yeah. So where were we in sort of the Kefa timeline? So you've gotten yourself some minis. You've got to focus on like trying to make professional wrestling a go.
Yeah,
Was mini painting and Warhammer stuff like your primary hobby, or was it just one of like many hobbies?
definitely that was my primary hobby for many years. Just because if you play Warhammer, the way we were do like going to tournaments and things like most people can't afford another hobby. That's a pretty
Yeah, yeah, that's what they say
so
about it.
we just picked the one, and I play video games too from time to time, but
Uh-huh.
as far as yeah, Warhammer was pretty much my only hobby for
And it
a good chunk.
and you had a good network of friends who also played and painted and collected and
Yes, but it was more like I knew where they were. I knew where they would be, right? So it was like
right.
sometimes I might not play competitively for 3 or 4 months, and then I would go to a tournament and play, half a dozen games in a weekend, and then the rest of the time you're spent like building troops, painting troops,
Mm-hmm.
playing games with my partner at the time, and
Have you always been Indianapolis?
no, not like yes. All right, so as a kid, I went to 17 different schools growing up. So
Jesus Christ!
like
Holy shit!
not like military parents or anything like that. Just like divorced parents, and my dad got a bunch of different jobs. So I was like moving back and forth
Uh,
between mom and dad moved around a lot. So it was like 90% in the central Indiana area, like a bunch
yeah.
of different towns, a bunch of different schools. And I did like a year in Wisconsin, which is a couple hundred miles away from here.
Right. Damn. That's so much moving around. That must have been real turbulent for you. Like, were you able
It,
to? It was difficult to find like consistent friends, I imagine.
it was like some things that I didn't realize until way later in life is every school I went to, I would very quickly be identified as like different, right?
Mm,
I never quite felt like I fit in.
mm,
I remember I went to so many different schools that I started like thinking to myself like this time I'm going to fit in with the
uh,
popular kids. I'm going to do things differently, or I'm going to, you know, like not let them know how weird I am or whatever.
yeah.
It wasn't until, you know, decades later, really, I had some of the emotional intelligence to look back and go, like, no, those children had formed bonds because they've grown up together since kindergarten. So, like, even the smelly kid, he was more in than me
Yeah.
because they grew up with him and he was one of them, right?
Yeah.
And I was every year, I was like, I'm the new kid
Yeah. The
all the time.
outsider. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the outside. So it was like spent many years thinking like I'm just so different than everyone else. And the truth was I just hadn't had the time to establish those types of connections.
Yeah. Yeah, man, that
And
sucks.
side effect of that is I can't stand team sports. Like every year there's like a different animal I'm supposed to cheer for and different colors we're supposed to wear. And I'm just like, I don't care about any of that.
You didn't grow up with the loyalty to a particular team drilled into you because like, oh, this is our local team and so we must support them regardless of anything else. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've never
My
fully
stepdad would
understood
get
that.
so mad at me for not cheering for the Indianapolis Colts. So I'm just like, I'll cheer the Cowboys because they win all the time, right? Like I had no loyalty to any teams. I didn't
Yeah,
understand.
I've never fully understood it. Like, I think I'd understand it more if there was actual like regulations about like in order to play for the X team from this particular town, you have to actually be from that town. Because
That would be
it's crazy to think that the fans have to show loyalty to a team when the teams can just be like pick and choose and buy people from all over. It was always weird to me because obviously it was more football focused, soccer focused when I was growing up in the UK. But like Manchester United, it's like if you are gonna be cheering for Manchester United, you better only ever cheer for Manchester United your whole freaking life and never anybody else. But also the people who play for Manchester United, most of them aren't from Manchester. They didn't grow up or
yeah.
born and raised in Manchester, and they can just be traded around. And like when David Beckham got signed with Barcelona, I think it was, and I was just left going, why? But he's not from Barcelona. He's not even from Spain. Like, why is what? Why? How are you allowed to just like go and play for whoever the hell pays most? It doesn't make any sense
Yeah.
to me. Why? Like, why would there be a? Why would there be a need for loyalty for a particular team? Because it's not like if it was like you need to have lived in the place that you're actually playing for the last 2 years or something, and so you can show that you're actually part of the culture there. Then you can look at a particular team who is better than other teams and go, oh, they must breed them better in Manchester. Like they must be doing they must be doing something right, and like they must have more focus on teaching the kids soccer from a young age in order to blah blah blah. But you don't have any of that, and yet you're still meant to, as the fan, you're still meant to be super loyal to that particular team. I don't know, weird. Never understood sports in general, and then I got into gaming, and I was like, oh, okay, I get, I get it. Like having the fandom towards gaming in a similar way.
Yeah.
I use sports to explain it to my brothers a lot because they're like, so you're just playing a board game, and I was like, very reductive, but sure, you can go with that. And they're like, but like other people are tuning in to watch you play a board game. Why would they do that? And I was like, what did you do this morning? He's like, I watched the Grand Prix, and I was like, okay, did you go out and drive the car yourself?
Right. Right.
No.
Yeah,
Did you watch somebody else who was really good at what they do what they do really well, and it was entertaining to watch? Oh, yeah, okay.
yeah, I always tell people that Dungeons and Dragons is it's like fantasy football for the jocks, right? It's like
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So you got into your mini painting in a big way, and were doing it mainly for your own needs, so that you could take them to not conventions, tournaments and things. Did you find the other people at the tournaments were like giving you feedback as well? Were they really receptive to how well you'd been painting your minis as well? Like, or
yeah,
was everybody on
you
a
always
similar level?
it's great to meet like-minded, artists. That's a lot. I made a lot of really strong connections at the conventions from other artists that I looked up to and that I could talk to. But a lot of my feedback and growth came from like Facebook groups. I joined a Facebook
Right.
group. I take a picture of what I painted and post it, and like, hey, any feedback you have. And like the first feedback, they were like, you need a new camera because these pictures look like shit, right? So I was like, okay. So once I
Any
upgrade,
feedback you have? You want to tidy a bed, tidy the back of the photograph. And, oh, you should move your couch because of the chi of the. Just give you feedback that's nothing to do with the mini at all.
it was like the photo quality was like they were grainy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
And it was
get you.
I didn't have a great camera phone. So when I finally was able to upgrade my phone, ever since I've always focused on like what's the best camera on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
Just because like that's how I make money is
Yeah,
the picture. It's not the miniature itself.
yeah,
The picture of the miniature is the product, right? That's what I'm
yes,
selling.
yeah.
That's my marketing. So yeah, now I make sure I have a sharp camera, and then I got feedback that way. I was able to make adjustments and learn things. I've taken classes, done as
Nice.
much as I can. Before I even started teaching miniature painting, also makes me a better painter because when I have to break it down for someone else to understand,
Mm-hmm.
it makes me analyze why I do the things I do.
100%.
And I've
Yeah.
always, I'm don't know who said it first, but in order to be a master at something, you need to be able to explain it very simply,
Yes.
right? If you can, I know artists who paint better than I do, but they're not the best communicators when it comes to like a classroom setting. So I've had every convention, I have students that are like, I took so and so's class, who's like a famous miniature painter, and it was not a great time. And your class is the best thing I've done at this entire convention, and that always feels really good to me. I know, I have a skill set that translates well. I'm able to break things down, the fundamentals, and explain why we do the things that we do.
Yeah. Being
So
excellent at a thing does not mean you are good at teaching that thing, as we all know from experience from school, from teaching. Like our teachers who may know everything there is to know about math and don't know how to break that down in a way that the kids are actually going to enjoy it and that sort of stuff. Like it's the same with all things. Like being a good teacher at something is its own skill.
yeah,
There was a series on YouTube that I used to really enjoy of like very complex subjects explained at 5 different levels, and it would be like an astrophysicist would start off talking to like a 4 year old and trying to explain a black hole or a quasar or a pulsar or something to a 4 year old, and then they'd talk to like a 10 year old, and then they talk to like a 17 year old who's doing it at high school, and then they talk to an undergrad, and then they talk to like a colleague, and like explain the same subject 5 different ways, and like watching the ones that were really good at it in that series. That was it was always it was always the ones that you can tell can quite easily adapt to their audience to explain things without talking down to them, but just like using language that they'll understand, and using making sure to check in with them as well was a big one of like, does that make sense to you, and then rephrasing themselves if it doesn't, that sort of stuff.
That sounds really interesting, actually.
It was, yeah. I wish I could remember the name of it, but yeah, it was. I mean, if you searched for like explains in 5 different ways, you'd probably find it. I'm sure you know how to Google things. But yeah, it was a good series to sort of highlight that fact that like it takes a real skill to be able to explain things in a way that people will understand. So then you let's see, we're up to about you're getting into streaming, I think, at this point. Then, so you're mini painting. You're doing it for bringing in some money with commissions and things. You're going to tournaments. You've got like I imagine a very sizable collection of minis at this point. Do you just, does it keep growing and growing and growing, or does it get to a point where logistically you don't have the room in your house to keep storing more, and so you need to get rid?
I have not paid money for a miniature in several years. Like,
Yeah.
and I still have more than enough. I'll never run out. And plus, like, people will give them to me if they want to see them painted. So,
Yeah.
like, once you reach a certain level, it's like people are trying to give you minis to paint, and it's, I don't know. Yeah, I have a gigantic like refrigerator sized box in my garage full of unpainted gray plastic minis. WizKids used to send me all of their miniatures before they released them, and just like,
Yeah. Nice.
that was a pretty sweet deal. But I could nowhere near keep up painting them. They wanted me to like paint them and show them off online, and I was just like, no way I could do it that fast. But
Yeah, I'd be like, yeah, okay, get me on your payroll. Like, if you want me to be doing it at the rate you need to be putting it out, I need to not have another job.
like, I mean, just get like coming home from work and seeing giant boxes of free minis on the porch was like satisfying, and it was also like recognition for the
Yeah.
level that I achieved. But yeah, I don't know what I'm gonna do with all this shit, you know. So
Yeah, likewise. The vast majority, I've got probably, I'd say it's not exaggeration to say in the thousands. I've probably got in the thousands of minis, and I don't know if I've ever bought any of them myself. They've been sent to me by WizKids. They've been sent to me by fans. They've been gifted to me from this and that and the other, and it's a fantastic privileged position to be in because I love minis. Like, I'm not much of a dice goblin for somebody who's this into TTRPGs. Dice Goblin is just like it's. I've got enough dice. I've got hundreds of sets, and like with the minis, I don't think I've bought any of them. I've got hundreds of sets of dice, but I've got enough for what I need them. But minis, like, there's always more minis. Like, I might have a dwarf with a shield and a sword, sure, but do I have a dwarf with a shield and an axe, or a dwarf with a shield and a hammer? And do I have a dwarf with a hood up? Do I have a dwarf with two swords, or do I have a sword with? And like, there's always customization, and I'm always wanting more and more and more and more.
well, I'm Twitch streaming to try to interact with my audience. Like I said, did not always have a big audience to watch me paint. Sometimes there was 2 people, sometimes there was nobody, and I was just like waiting for people to log in, right?
Right.
But to try to create some interaction with the audience, I would like, hey, let's build a background for this character while I'm painting it, right? So, I would say like, okay, he's got a book, on his hip here. Like, what's this book about? Is it a spell book? Like a cookbook, right? And we would interact with the audience in that way and try to build a background for this character while I'm painting it. And yeah, every day a different character, and with the audience's help, we would come up with the story of what this character is, and then I would ship it off to whoever paid me to paint that one and do another one the next day. But while I'm doing that, I'm trying to anything I can to create content, because I'm trying to grow the audience, and so I started sharing other people's Kickstarter projects on like ad breaks, but we didn't have those then. So it was
Yeah.
just like, hey, let me show you something cool I found that I want to support other
Yeah.
creators. And while I was sharing um, this other campaign for a Kickstarter called Nightfell RPG, and I showed off their video, had some of the most impressive artwork I've ever seen,
Mm.
and I personally was very excited for the Kickstarter. I reached out to the creator, a guy named Angelo Peluso, who's at the time most well known for doing like Magic the Gathering artwork.
Mm.
And he was so excited that I was hyping it up that he jumped into the stream to hang out for a bit, talk to people, and we became friends. And he sent me like a free primer for the setting. He was like, "Hey, let me
Nice.
send you this adventure primer." Uh, he's an Italian. The book was written in Italian and then all translated to
Yeah.
English. So he sent me this English primer, and it was not good. It was in
Yeah.
bad shape, and a lot of it was just poorly translated.
Right.
Right. I think he had a friend that kind of spoke English, and he was translating things, and everybody was doing the best they could.
Mm-hmm.
So I just communicated with him. I made some edits on the thing and I sent it back to him. And I was just like, "Hey, let me just explain my situation." I was like, "I volunteered at this board game magazine. I never went to school for editing or anything
Mm-hmm.
like that. I write as a hobby, but like I had no published credits or anything like that." I said, "But I can make this better than it is right now,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? So whatever my skill set is, it's enough to improve your product."
Yeah.
So I was like, "If you're interested at all," I think I charged like 2 cents a word
Mm-hmm.
to because I was like, I need to break in somehow.
Yeah.
He ended up hiring me to edit all three of his books, the Adventure Module, Game Master's Guide, and the Monster Manual. And so happy with the work. He recommended me to Mana Project Studio. I also did the editing for Seven Sinners. Both of those products ended up winning Emmy Awards.
Damn.
Um, so that made me super proud. My name's in all those books. I actually did the editing for his werewolf
Mm-hmm.
expansion that they released, and somehow it got printed without my name in it, which is a little frustrating. But he said
Nice.
he'll fix it on the next print run. It was a mistake. Um,
And you were
and
doing all this like just part time while you were also holding down a full time job.
Yeah, I would come home from work and work in my studio until like 11 o'clock at night. I was
Jeez.
burning the candle at both ends hard,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
to the point of just like I probably missed out on some, like important family time and stuff in there
Mm.
because I was going so hard trying to elevate the hobby jobs enough to quit the regular job, right?
Yeah.
And there was an uncomfortable gap when you have children and insurance and mortgage, and
Yeah.
it just there was always like an uncomfortable leap of faith that I was never 100% confident that it would be okay.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I get that.
so while I'm editing their work, I started to get more confident in my own writing abilities. And I was like, I think like based on what I'm seeing and how successful they are, I think the Nightfall RPG did $300,000 or something on Kickstarter. I was like, I can do this. Maybe, I can maybe do the writing at a higher level.
Mm-hmm.
And then the thing that they did really, really well, which was the artwork and marketing, I hired his entire art team, including him, to work on my first product.
Nice.
So, for those of you who don't know, my first published product was Banners of Honor 5e. It's an adventure module for levels 1 to 10 and a complete setting. And we use honor as a seventh stat throughout the adventure to
Nice.
interact with knights and royalty and other noblemen who observe the local chivalrous code.
I
Right.
like that. That's a cool idea. Are there associated skills as well? Like, is it
As
is it
far as
is, is it a full on stat? Like it's like strength, dexterity, and all the rest of it. Like honor is one of the stats of your
we
character.
we did not expand it into skills. We
Right.
maybe could have, but
So you're
like
not making like an honor chivalry check or a...
so we had some other concepts that we introduced, because first of all, the Dungeon Master Guide did have honor spelled HONOR as like an optional rule, and we
right.
were we were playing with that, but also we weren't sure like that's not um, OGL or whatever. So we spelled it the European way with a HONOUR
Mm.
and made our own subtly different rule set for this. So basically, there was a chart in the book that guided how other characters would react to you or how they would treat you in role playing
Yeah,
settings.
yeah, yeah. Like based
Um,
on what your honor level was.
yeah, so it's a little bit of like a personality system, or
Mm-hmm,
not
mm-hmm.
personality, but reputation system.
Yeah,
And we also had certain characters that, based on your interactions with them, they would branch and become either like a super villainous version of themselves or a heroic version of themselves and become either your ally or like a mini boss for the
right.
campaign
Yeah,
later. Um,
that's fun.
but we created our jousting rules for that book. Like the
Mm-hmm.
foundation of what I'm doing now stems from
Mm.
that. But I'm getting way ahead of myself. Um,
This was this is currently the third one you're doing. So the honor
this is
was the
my
first one.
Banners of Honor and now Complete Guide to Jousting is our second book,
Right.
and we've got more stuff lined up in the works, but it's a little bit
Nice.
top secret right now. We'll
So
talk about it.
what was the first one called again?
Banners of Honor
Banners
5e.
of Honor. And is that something that people can still find? Where do they get that?
So we're actually selling it as an add-on right now for Complete Guide to Jousting in the Kickstarter,
Nice.
which is at a discounted rate. Um, I have a pallet of these books in my garage, so I need to move some of these.
Yeah.
We had a big life transition, so I've had to move house and make some other changes.
Yeah.
So I haven't quite got my e-store flowing the way I needed to.
Yeah.
Right, I need to get some boxes and start packaging these things up and shipping them from here myself.
Yeah.
We had a warehouse handling that for us, but the sales we were doing was just about breaking even with the cost of storing
That's
the
the
books.
storing. Yeah.
So, before Gen Con this year, I had them ship everything to me. We did have our books for sale at Gen Con in the AAW Games booth for the first time ever this year. They were very kind to let us have some space there in exchange for my friends working the booth.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So how did it go the first one with the Banners of Honor? Like how did you feel like it was? Was it a success? Were you disappointed? Was it as
It
good as
was
you expected?
it was kind of like paying for my education in a lot of ways.
Right. Yeah.
So my buddy and I, we invested say $20,000 of our own money to get this product ready for Kickstarter. That was like all the artwork, animated, like Kickstarter video. We hired a voice actress. Um, we had all the marketing in the world. Nord Games was supporting us. They were kind of like our guardian angels on that product
Right. Yeah.
and project and guiding us through it. And the idea was we'll spend all this money up front and get it to market, and then hopefully, because we had seen these other products that were, look just as pretty, but in the end weren't really all they were cracked up to
Yeah.
be very, very successful.
Yeah.
So we were hoping that by doing the things right that they were missing on, and then also having the same level of artwork and presentation, that we would be really, really successful. Then Russia invaded the Ukraine, and like the whole economy started slowing down right as we were launching. Also, I underestimated like my friend Angelo. He was famous already, nerd famous for being a Magic the Gathering artist. Right, he already
Right.
had developed quite a following for that.
Right.
So a lot of people, they didn't know who I was. They didn't know about my miniature painting. All they saw was first time Kickstarter creator, and they're like, "I'll pass," right? Because you don't know if can you trust this
Yeah.
creator. You give
Exactly.
it
Yeah.
money, product, et cetera, et cetera. So being a first time creator is always an added challenge. And then not having my own audience at that point, I hadn't even started a newsletter, for example. Um, so we were really counting on Backer Kit, who was very high on our project. They were like the first meeting I had. I remember the guy was like, "To be honest with you, I didn't think it was going to be this good." So he didn't really prepare for the meeting, and then he set up a meeting for the next day so he could prepare and do better for it. And I was like, "Cool, that sounds like a good sign, really."
I
Um,
mean, yeah, but also like,
yeah,
fucking hell.
And then like day one
I didn't prepare.
of
I thought this was gonna be shit, so I didn't even bother.
he
Sorry.
thought I was just some guy, but and I like at the end of the day I am just some guy, but I just like I worked really hard at this.
Yeah.
Um, but day one of the Kickstarter backer kit, their ads were super underperforming what they promised. We had
Right.
to shut them off right away.
Yeah.
Nord Games was super helpful to us for our first project. Um, and we had worked out a percentage deal with them for all of the marketing support and access to their audience. They have a newsletter with 30,000, emails in it or whatever.
Yeah.
So those were like I learned a lot about what to do and what not to do. Right. Since then,
Hmm.
I've been steadily running ads to collect newsletter leads so that I bring my own audience to bear.
Yeah.
This time, Nord Games had to downsize. They just launched a Kickstarter of their own, which thankfully was very successful for them. Um, but they didn't have the resources to also be managing my project this time,
Mm.
right? So uh, the second project, while it's not financially raising as much, it doesn't look like it's going to be at the same level as Banners of Honor. Still a huge success. We funded, within the first 72 hours, we brought our own
Nice.
audience. The marketing that I've learned over the last 3 years, I was able to create baskets of assets for the marketing team to
Yep.
use, and we were able to keep our ads in the black for 5 full days.
Hell
And a
yeah.
lot of people are struggling right now. So the way I understand it, that was a big win. Is having your ads, performing well enough to be profitable for the first 5 days of the campaign is not a lot of people can do that right now.
That's amazing. Well done.
So we are making progress. Like it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back in
Yeah.
some ways. And also this book, it was meant to be a splat book. Like it's standalone for sure. You don't have
Hmm.
to have any other books or rules to introduce jousting into your 5e setting.
Hmm.
But it's also an expansion of the campaign setting that we created that's already about knights and honor and jousting.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So if you already own Banners of Honor, this is a great add-on. It's a smaller book. It's meant to cater to that audience that we already built, that already loves knights and things. And it was also meant to be like a book that didn't cost me 20 grand to get to market, right?
Yeah.
So that
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I wanted to generate enough profit to start creating the next thing, right? That's the goal, is to be profitable enough to survive
Yeah.
both personally and professionally, right? And
Yeah.
create the best product that I can possibly make.
Yeah, nice. So tell me a little more about the idea for the jousting in the first place. Like, what was the idea? Where did the idea come that like this was going to be the next Kickstarter and it was just going to be solely about jousting? Like while you were making the
So,
Banners of Honor stuff, you found the jousting stuff was like, man, this is complex. This could
well,
be its own
it was
thing.
actually we kept it very simple. So for Banners of
Nice.
Honor, we knew we wanted to have jousting. We both loved like a Knight's Tale and things
Yeah.
like that. So we kept it as simple as we could because I feel like if it's a simple mechanic and it works, then it can be a lot of fun. You
Yeah.
don't want to burden it with too many complications and things.
Yeah.
Uh, and we created a system where any character, whether you're a druid riding a bear or like a fighter cavalier on a
Yeah.
warhorse, anybody can win this tournament based on uh, different skills. So everybody takes an animal handling check that modifies how accurate your attack is on
Nice.
that
Yeah.
charge,
Yeah.
right?
Love that.
So characters that have a higher wisdom can perform really well, controlling their mount, which evens out with some of the melee characters that are
Yeah.
much better at striking.
Not as good with my mount, but I'm really good with the actual attack roll, the strike.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we were able to balance this out in such a way that any type of character, any class can win this tournament, right? And it felt really good. Like we did a big tournament with my home group, and our druid won the tournament, and it
Nice.
like unseating paladins, and it just felt right. It felt
Yeah. Nice.
really good, really balanced. My players were like literally on the edge of their seats, like waiting for the next charge.
Uh huh.
Uh, we also ran a lot of playtesting jousting tournaments on the D20 cruise.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to be invited in 2022 to partake in that cruise and run some
Where does
Banners of
the
Honor.
where does the cruise go?
This one was out of the port of Los Angeles and went to Cabo and Ensenada,
Oh, okay, cool.
and we ran. Yeah, I mean, it was kind of a grind. Like it was a free cruise, and they paid us like $500 on top. But we worked like dogs. Like we ran
Yeah,
a
I bet.
bunch of long sessions, long into the night, and
Yeah, yeah.
hundred
Not not
percent would
not
do it
not
again.
not a not a cruise, not
I mean,
cruising.
it was one of the best trips I ever had in my life,
Yeah,
but it was also a
but a
lot
lot
of
of
work.
work as
And
well. Yeah,
but the players on the ship were also talking about how like physically they could feel like the anxiety of the charge for jousting,
yeah,
and like
nice.
I knew that we had something like those core rules
Yeah,
and Banners of
yeah,
Honor were solid as a rock. Um,
yeah.
so
Like,
there were a
and we
lot
can
of things.
expand on this to get a little
Yes,
yeah, splat book as you call it. Yeah.
I've got another project that I've been working on the back burner for several years at this point. And my business partner, Sammy, he would tell me, "You're not allowed to work on something else until we get this done." Right. And I'm like, oh. So,
And
unbeknownst to him, I just kept a folder on my desktop that, like, it was
here's for
called
later.
Forbidden Knowledge, right? It was Forbidden Knowledge. So, whenever I had a really, really cool idea, I would just open it and jot it down. I'm like, I'll come back for
Yeah,
that.
smart, smart.
I'll be back. And I was already looking forward to creating this project next, right?
Yeah,
And while I was on this cruise ship, we sat down with Janet and I can't remember her husband's name, Dimitri, I think, from
Dimitri
World
from
Anvil.
World Anvil. Yeah, Janet and
Yeah,
Dimitri. Yeah,
we had a breakfast with them, and we actually
nice.
traveled through Ensenada and went to lunch and had a great time. But Janet was telling me, like, she's the one that convinced me that the splat book was the way to go next. But like, you have this built-in audience, you have like,
Hmm.
what they're interested in, to do something small and profitable and to help fuel, the passion project that's on the back burner.
Yeah,
And so, trusting the people that have been doing this longer than me, and much more successfully than me, I was like, all right, that sounds like a plan. So we started digging in on what can we do, with this jousting mechanic. There were many things that we didn't get to do for Banners of Honor because it's already a 300-page adventure module. There's only so much more stuff we could cram
right.
in there.
Yeah,
So we looked at all the different types of mounts. We had a lot of fun creating. So the system we created, every mount has certain associated um, keywords, right?
right,
So like if you have an unruly mount, then
right.
it affects your animal handling check. So they can
Oh man, my
be
brain's going crazy. Like I'm immediately going and like, oh, like I'm going down different types of weird. Like you could do like a fairy riding a blink dog, and you could do like
oh
someone
yeah,
on you could do flying jousting like a griffin versus a pegasus, and I was like, oh
that's where
man,
we're
I want people in the chat to start giving me unusual combinations of like
of
rider and
riders,
mount. Give me
please.
some riders and mounts in the chat. Um, yeah, I love that stuff. So how did you come up with the tags for them? You got like an unruly mount, and you got a trained mount, presumably, and things like
We
that.
knew this was part of our core rules, so we wanted
Yeah,
it to be simple. We knew that it was just going to affect your animal handling check in the joust. So we started with just mechanically. We knew we wanted a -1, +1, a -2, a +2, right? So we started with that table of like these are the different
yeah,
effects, and we started applying names to them that sounded fitting, right? So like the negative ones are like cold-blooded, unruly, and
yeah,
wild, right? So if you have you can capture any creature and
yeah,
train it to be a mount, but it's still a wild creature until it achieves a certain level of training. Then you get to replace that wild with a different
yes,
keyword.
yeah. I like
And
that
then on
because then you get
the pot,
benefits for like downtime stuff as well. Like you're like spending time. You're encouraging that role play of like, what are you gonna do in the evening? It's like, oh, I'm gonna go to the training. I'm gonna go to the stables and train trying to break in this stallion that I've got or whatever.
you've got it.
And then
And
when you
then
finally get to a point where the dungeon master goes, "Hey, you've done well enough with you've spent enough time downtime that it's no longer a wild mount; it's just unruly," and you're like, "Yes, I'm no longer
yeah,
getting
that's
my
exactly.
-3 or whatever." Yeah,
And then we also have bonding. So you can bond with your mount, and it goes +1, +2, and +3. And for Banners of Honor, we kept that strictly as a role playing mechanic, like you're talking about. If you've been taking
Yeah.
care of your mount, the
Yeah. Nice.
DM rewards you by saying, like, hey, you've now achieved bonding +2, right? So it's a very simple calculation. If you look at your keywords, add it up, and you have either a plus or a minus to your animal handling check for the joust. So there was a lot of different fluctuation there, but it was still simple enough that you calculate it once. You don't have to do it every time you're rolling to attack or anything
Yeah.
like that. So we changed some things for this new book. Bonding is a little bit of a blend between a skill check and role playing. So now you use your inspiration, and at a long rest, you can take a bonding check with your mount. And the difficulty is set by the game master depending on recent events. So, like, have you been paying special attention and caring
Yeah.
for your
Yeah.
mount? Have you been in combat? Has your mount been wounded or injured or neglected or
Yeah.
treated?
Have
So
you
that'll
given him
affect.
treaties and scritches?
And and importantly, whether you succeed or you fail, you can't take that check again until the next game session
Right.
or another time that seems fitting for your group. So you
Yeah.
might decide like once a month or once every 2 weeks or whatever,
Mm.
because we wanted to adapt everything to the new 2024 rule set, and humans get inspiration every time they wake up. So I'm like,
Right.
great, that mechanic is a little bit problematic now. So by spreading it out, to once per game session, that means that we are creating this bonding experience with your mount over a series of
Yeah.
adventures, right? Over a
Yeah.
series of sessions. So it's not something that humans can do very quickly, and everybody else is playing catch up.
Yeah.
Um, so I thought it was important that it wasn't just the game master's discretion, that the players can actually take control of bonding with their creature in some way.
That's cool. I like that.
It created for the tournaments a bunch of new tournament formats. So instead of just like a bracket tournament, right? Now we have double elimination tournaments where possibly the winner of the losers bracket can take another crack at the champion at the end. We have round robin where, like, if you only have 5 guys that want to joust, then they can all compete against each other and score
Right. Yeah.
points based on how they do.
That's
Uh,
smart. Yeah. Yeah. I wouldn't have necessarily thought about that straight away.
we
Like how
have
to
joust.
utilize different initial competitor numbers, like in
Mm-hmm.
a way that doesn't actually work itself out into a nice multiple of two.
Right. We also set up team jousting options so that you can either ride in tandem. Each of these tournament formats has an optional twist, right?
Mm.
So either you can ride in tandem and attack at the same time, or the two jousting knights just take turns rotating one in and one out
Yeah.
until you unseated, and then you just keep going against
Yeah.
both guys
Yeah.
until you know what I mean. So it's like a double.
Do we have rules for like what if somebody the druid wants to wild shape into your mount like and like polymorphed wizards and stuff?
Besides the half a dozen or so different tournament formats that we have a series of optional rules that can be applied to any tournament format. One of the optional rules is spellcasting, and I think wild shaping would fall into that category.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and there's a certain pre-approved list of spells that would be allowed for each jousting tournament. I
Yeah.
guess some of them you make the list yourself, so you can, of course, things like shield, things like my brain is failing me right now. I have a list of like bless and
Like
things like
silvery barbs and stuff of like to force them to reroll their attack or like to cast blindness on them right before they charge in at you. And I can
so
imagine
there.
I can imagine trying to come up with like a contingency for every possibility in D&D would be literally a futile game because there's everything that there's 700 spells in the game, and also each of those spells could be used in a weird way that the players would be like, oh, what about if I did this though? What if I cast the something entangle on the horse right as he's about to get to me so it trips it and stuff? You'd be able to come up with everything, and so you can't possibly make rules for
Sure,
everything. That would have been
gonna be some game master discretion, but
exactly, yeah.
optional twist for the spellcasting optional rule is that only spectators are allowed to cast spells
Oh,
on
nice,
the
yeah.
on the
So your
right?
team
So that
can still be involved. The fight, put the Cavalier fighter up there in the joust, but then the bard can still stand at the side and cast some buffing
you
spells
got,
and stuff.
and also like in certain formats, right? Your wizard might really excel in the joust, but then it
Mm.
evens the playing field if everyone's allowed to cast spells, from
Yeah,
outside.
smart. That's some good stuff.
So
Man,
that's a lot of fun.
there's a
We
lot of
also
fun. There's a lot of fun ideas coming in. The first one was human rider riding a human mount,
have
or a centaur riding a centaur, a kobold riding a giraffe, a minotaur riding a human, not the other way around, a gnome on a rhino. That's a pretty cool idea. Goliath riding a polar bear is pretty dope. Like, oh,
oh,
that's a powerful image, isn't it? Like it gets Golden Compass vibes for me, like an armored
I'm
polar bear
putting
coming
together
in
some
Goliath.
NPCs for this project. I might just steal some ideas from your
Yeah,
chat.
absolutely. Human rider riding a seahorse. Oh, I'd have gone with Triton or something like a Triton, an underwater jousting. Jeez, yeah,
I haven't got to
Triton.
underwater jousting, but we do have rules for flying jousting
Nice.
that requires optional, or not optional, but additional skill checks for flying through rings in like
Oh yeah,
in
nice.
a little bit like Quidditch, like the Harry
Yeah,
Potter.
yeah, yeah.
That keeps them on track to hit each other, and
Mm-hmm.
then rings can also be enchanted. So when you fly through it, you get a bonus, and
Oh
if you
hell
miss
yeah.
it, right? And then you can increase or decrease the DC of those checks by making the rings bigger or smaller. So they
Nice.
can be really challenging, like small rings that you have to fly through to hit each other, that come with magical bonuses, incentives. And
That's
then,
cool.
yeah,
Very
falling
random
damage is a
honey badger. That's funny.
very real part of the flying joust. So,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, having the falling damage as well. Yeah, man, so much stuff. I love this, and that's all available just with complete guide to jousting 5e on Kickstarter. And you said it was funded in 72 hours.
yeah, it funded very quickly in the first 72 hours, and I also I made a mistake while setting up some of the shipping. So there was a couple of tiers that were telling people plus an extra $60, shipping or whatever.
Hmm.
It was an error on my part. So the early birds, the prices that I set for the early birds that were supposed to expire after 72 hours, I extended it for the duration of the campaign, and I blocked off the ones that had the error. So there's no concern about somebody accidentally overpaying for the book. We caught it very quickly and fixed it. And to make up for that mistake, I made the early bird prices for the duration of the entire campaign. So you can get basically a free PDF of Banners of Honor for backing the physical book of Complete Guide to Jousting, and you get $20 off if you want both physical books and a Game Master screen and the miniature STLs that we created for
Hell
complete
yeah,
or for.
dude, that sounds amazing. I'm gonna have to check it out as well. How much longer have they got to actually check it out?
Ooh, we got 20 days left on this bad boy. So it's my full time job right now to network and
I bet.
to do things like this. I haven't actually looked at the Kickstarter the entire time we've been talking. We were really close to the next stretch goal, which is 16,000. And
What is the actual closing date? Because obviously people live will know what 20 days is, but when we put this up on YouTube later,
uh,
people watching will need to know.
yeah, December 12th is the end of the Kickstarter
December
at
12th. There you
noon.
go. So if you're listening to this on my YouTube before December 12th, it's still live. You can head over to the Kickstarter. There'll be a link in the description, of course, and you should check it out.
And I am expecting we will probably hit the next stretch goal today. And the next one is a little bit of there's a bigger gap
Bit
moving
of a
forward.
gap. Yeah.
But the next one is a free poster will be included in every single book, which is something we did for Banners of Honor as well. Every book comes with a giant fold out map of the kingdom.
Nice. We
And
love maps.
I personally, I don't know if you can see much of the room around me there, but you can see I've got all my
Not a
maps.
great deal. Got a chunk of the thing over your left shoulder, I think.
Oh, I see. I see. Okay, but I love fantasy maps, and it was really important to me to include one in Banners of Honor.
Yeah.
And so for the complete guide to jousting, we actually are hoping to include a fold-out poster for the King's Grand Tournament. So it's kind of like a
Nice.
big handout or something that you can hang up at your house for your players before you embark on a big tournament.
Nice. Yes, sorry, I was thinking about you when I said some people really love maps. I just got a map made myself of an area of my world. It's sitting behind my cabinet at the moment, trying to stretch out because it came all
Exciting,
rolled up just yesterday, and it's
it
like a really
definitely
nice
caught my
thick
attention.
paper. But it had a really tight curl to it because of how it came in the post. So I've kind of forced it out behind the cabinet to kind of like straighten it itself out. But yeah, that map just hit my merch store, and and it's very exciting for a lot of people. So you're jousting. Obviously, that's the thing that's taking up your present day focus. That's what you're
Yeah,
focused on at the moment. This is the second thing that you're publishing, and you've set yourself up as an actual publishing company, Kefa Studios. Yes, that's. And are you?
yeah.
Sorry, go on.
It was Kefa Paint Studios was my like online handle for all the years that I was doing commissions and stuff. And once I started expanding into writing and editing and things of that nature, I just dropped the paint and became just Kefa Studios, plural.
Mm.
We do paint, we do writing, we do all the things.
And would you consider doing publishing for other people? Like, would if somebody else came to you and said like, "Hey, would you help me publish this thing?"
I would. I'm very interested in that. Also, I haven't quite scratched the itch of being like a published author myself. So I plan on publishing a novel in the next couple of years
Interesting. That's cool.
with my, there's a little bit of secret stuff happening right now. Um, we
Fantasy
already have
genre,
our
presumably.
do what?
Fantasy genre, presumably.
Absolutely, yeah. So we already have our next project lined up, and there are people working very hard behind the scenes to get this thing prepared. We have started dropping hints in the Kickstarter itself, and so far I've only seen one person comment that they've even recognized those hints are there. So there's a little Easter egg for those of you in the comment section. There's some stuff to find that's hidden on the Kickstarter page that hints towards
Interesting.
what we've got coming up next. But
Interesting.
that's
So that's your. It will be a Kickstarter after the jousting one,
it.
like
It
the next
will
project.
be a couple of things, but a Kickstarter is one of them. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, this is very exciting. So go check out the Kickstarter for sure and look for those Easter eggs that are hinting at what's coming next.
Shout them out in the
I'm
comments, backers to pay attention.
I'd be I'm starting to speculate as well, like from the perspective of what would I do if I was so I like to me obviously the obvious thing is like it's going to be in the same world of the banner of honor and the jousting, and so it's going to be something to do with
So I can see
knights
why
and
you would
stuff.
think that. However, after 3 years, I'm a little burned out of writing
Yeah,
about nights.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm taking a bit of a left turn. I hope everybody's willing to turn with me. We're
Interesting.
gonna do
Yeah, we'll
something
find out.
a little because like when we settled on banners, there were a few different like genres that I wanted to play with. Um, and yeah, we settled on knights because there really was nothing of that kind on the market. Uh, but yeah, I still have backups in the canon. I'm ready to go.
I love it.
So
I love that. So we'll start talking sort of like future stuff, I guess. I just want to pause to take a to sort of remind the chat that I am kind of half reading the chat as we go, but I do like to focus my attention mostly on my guest during short rests. So if you do have questions for either of us, make sure to redeem those questions with your channel point redemptions so that I'll actually be able to put them all in a list and get to them at the end. We will make time to actually answer all of your questions. If you've got any questions for me or Kefa about mini painting or jousting or knights and what got us into it, or something completely different, you could just ask us what's our favorite favorite place to go on holiday. All right, so talking about future things, Kevin,
mhm.
what's obviously joust is your primary goal, and then you said you've got your next thing kind of lined up, and you've got an idea of what's happening with that and where it goes. You know when to begin it after jousting. That's your immediate future goals. Is there anything that's even beyond that, like your sort of more long term
So
goals for Kefa Studios?
what I've learned, like you said at the start of this chat, is like we all have to wear a bunch of different hats,
Mm.
in this industry. So you're never just one thing, right? I'm not just a miniature painter. I'm not just a writer. I've been, the biggest challenge for me over the last 3 years has been getting eyeballs on my product. I'm very confident in the product and the quality of the work. I've always said if I can get 1 million people to look at Banners of Honor, I'll make $1 million. Right, one
Yeah.
in 60 will buy. Like, if I can get 1 million D&D fans, right, to look at this book, I think we'll be in a really great spot. So marketing is a nightmare. I hate it,
Yeah.
but so necessary. So instead of avoiding it or just hoping someone else will take care of it for me, I've been doing everything in my power to learn how to do marketing for myself
Yeah.
and how to improve. And like I've already seen a massive improvement in what I was able to bring to Banners of Honor versus what I'm able to bring to Complete Guide to Jousting. Right. It's like Nord Games definitely was the bulk of our marketing for Banners of Honor, but they're not around for this one. So even though it looks like we're taking a dip, Kefa Studios has actually improved significantly on how much reach we have personally.
Yeah.
Um, so I've been teaching myself marketing, all the different tools, video editing, uh, asset creation, running ads, ad management, etc. And I just recently have started putting myself out there to other creators, other Kickstarter creators, other projects that are struggling or need some assistance.
Mm-hmm.
I'm putting myself out there as a marketing manager right now for similar projects, for things that I understand. Right, so
Yeah.
someone approached me about like a software program that they're designing, and I'm like, I'm not your guy. Like, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, but
Yeah.
if you've got some cool artwork and a great little product that you're trying to get eyeballs on, I think I can help with those things. So I'm pushing myself in that direction. I still do freelance artwork. I still do miniature painting classes. I do like boot camps at my local game store. We're selling tickets right now to paint some frost giants next month.
Nice.
Um, and I'm doing freelance writing and editing. So while doing cross promotion on several other products while my Kickstarter is live, a couple of other companies have been like, by the way, send me a message and tell me how much you charge for editing, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I am going to keep doing all the things until I figure out, exactly where I'm the most successful, right?
Hell
I'm
yeah.
willing to learn and adapt and keep doing these things. And I have to have a creative output. So
Yeah.
even if the marketing is super successful, I'm still going to be creating products of my own because a writer doesn't write because they want to, right? They
Mm-hmm.
write because they have
Because they
or
have to. Yeah.
something.
Yeah, I get that.
So
Just
yeah,
you
that's
you
cool right
mentioning you
now.
mentioning frost giants. So I was like, oh, I want to show off one of the things. Just I was talking about how Spidey does an amazing job for me. My friend Mike, like goes
Yeah,
above and beyond with his painting and things. He got I got a frost giant given to me ages ago, and he painted it up for me, and I was so pleased with it all. It was incredible work, and he put all of this like fake snow all over it as well, and made sure that it was like properly detailed in all of its. Because the mini itself is impressive. Like really, it's got all of these like little details of the sword, the tiny little swords. Because obviously, like from a regular miniatures size
yeah,
standpoint, like somebody who would be about that level stabbing them in the shins, it's always amazing. All this ice that's on the edges of the blade, I'm really impressed with. So I love the fact that he's got an entire deer just hanging off his hip, and
good. Yeah,
he's put
I
all of
like that
this.
a
He's
lot.
put all this like fake snow all over him as well.
So I'm sitting next to my display case here. I got.
Yeah, let's
I'm
see
not sure
some.
how well things will translate on camera. So
Yeah,
a couple
unfortunately,
of my
that's the case, isn't it, with the lighting and
bigger
such.
fun guys, but
Oh, that's fun. I
this
like
is
that.
a keg golem.
Nice. I like a keg golem.
This is one that I just painted this guy for fun for like gaming purposes. Uh,
I get a lot of inspiration for ideas from just looking at what minis I've got sometimes. Like I'll just be going into like a D&D game and I'll be like, I don't really know what I've got planned for today, and I'll just look at my minis and go, oh yeah, I can throw this at them.
I don't know how well this one will translate, but this is
It's not
my D&D
it's not super
character.
focused, but I can see the detail of the glowing fire, which is incredible. I
Yeah,
always love that. I always
but I
absolutely
do
love
have.
that.
I saw earlier your team posted a link to my website, and there is a gallery on there
Hell yeah.
with better pictures of some of my work. So
Um, let's have a little look. See, check the people always talking about the painted minis and things. Da, 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 da. I think those are just questions that are coming in. Is it about time? I think we can get to sort of final talks about blue sky, far future goals, and then we'll start asking the questions that are coming in from the chat. What's like your ideal? Like, where would you love to be? What would you be wanting to do ultimate, like far future kind of thing, or is it just like a take it as it comes? Who the hell knows?
I mean, like, yeah, I'm very ambitious. I want to be like financially secure in this creative space, right?
Mm-hmm.
And right now, it's a challenge. I'm doing everything I can to avoid having to go get another like warehouse job or something like that to make ends meet. Um, but I have a plan. Like it's just a matter of like trusting the process and putting in the work. You know, I'm a firm believer that I have the skills and work ethic necessary to make this work.
Yeah.
You know, it's important to have a few lucky breaks along the way, but it's also important to like foster relationships and build
Mm-hmm.
that network because you never know which one of your friends is going to reach out to you and say like, "Hey, by the way, you know, they're looking for an editor, they're looking for a miniature painter,
Yeah.
or whatever the case may be." So I say yes to every opportunity that I get to meet new people and try new things, and yeah, man, I just want to keep moving and build my audience. I want to build my little network so that when I do have a project, you know, I already have those thousands of eyeballs are coming with me. They're not with
Yeah.
Backer Kid, they're not
Yeah.
with Nord Games or whatever. They're my supporters,
Yeah.
and I think that's the most important thing for me right now is to just create that community. You know,
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're focused on the right thing there. At least what I would say is the right one. I'd definitely imagine that that's the way forward in this industry is to be focused on the end goal of having a community rather than the end goal being uh, making millions. Like as long as your focus is the community and the work that you're doing and continuing to increase the skills that you've got in that field. I think the rest of it will follow from that. At least one would hope.
yeah.
Let's have a look. See, so we've got some questions coming on in. Let me just double check which ones. Let's have a look. So Fancy, firstly, obviously, to be expected, Fancy has asked, can you show us some more of your minis? So we saw the barrel, the keg monster, and the wizard with the glowing light all over them, which looked amazing. What else can you give us an example of?
A couple of things within reach here. I entered this at Gen Con this year, and I got a silver for
Oh,
large models.
oh, that's cool.
Yeah, quite happy with her. And just this morning, I was in communication with the company that produces this model. They have another Kickstarter coming up, so we're going to be cross promoting with them on my jousting Kickstarter and their miniature Kickstarter. So be looking towards working together with them on that. Here's a
Nice.
friendly little owl bear. I don't know if it's
Ooh, he looks
on
cool.
the camera, but there's tons of like texture in the feathers and the fur here.
Yeah, it seems like it. Yeah, man, need to head over to your website and get the galleries with the. Uh,
Like I hate showing them off like this, honestly, because I don't think this camera does them justice at all.
it's not
But
doing it justice. Yeah, but I mean, that's the thing. Like if you go in knowing that knowing that this is not nearly as good as it would look in person or on a decent camera setup, you can kind of go, well, it's already very impressive even through a webcam.
yeah,
Story Cobalt asks, will you be bringing any of these projects to conventions? Hint UK. Hint. Do you do convention circuit and travel more than just Gen Con?
I do a couple of conventions, but mostly I do the ones that make sense for me financially from the miniature painting point of view. So like
Right.
at Gen Con, I teach a bunch of classes. There's another one called Adepticon that was in Chicago and now is moving a little further north to Wisconsin. And because I make money teaching those classes, that able, affords me to be able to travel and cover expenses and things of that nature. We do now we'll have two products. You kind of need a bunch of different products in order to justify like having a booth space or something like that at conventions. However, I'm always doing freelance work for other companies. Any companies in the UK would like me to come over there and work the booth and sell my products, and we can work something out. Like, help me get there, help make it make sense, and I'll be there, man. I'll
Yeah.
say yes to every opportunity that I can.
Yeah, and it is a case of that. Like, it is a case of often how viable is it for me to get to? There's conventions and things that I'd be much more inclined to go to if they reached out and was like, we'll pay for your flights, or we'll pay for your accommodation, or we'll do this and this and this.
The
There was one in Utah, relatively small thing held by just like a single game store owner who he runs the whole thing pretty much. It's the largest D&D game in the world. He's done it a couple of years in a row now, and he's got the Guinness World Record for it. And it's like a simultaneous, everybody's playing, like there's hundreds of tables of individual games, but they're all playing the same story, like sieging a city or something.
yeah.
And he reached out this year, Dead Wars, and he was like, would you be interested? And I was like, that sounds amazing, but like I'm in New Zealand and it's incredibly expensive for me to get to Utah. And he's like, oh no, I meant, would you be interested, because I would fly you out and put you up? And so I was like, yeah, in that case, hell yes, let's go. Yeah, it makes a big difference when when people who are saying like, yeah, we'd love to have you over, can also actually help you out with it. Because something to remember is, like, for the most part, people in this industry, people making content for tabletop role playing anyway, or tabletop gaming, we're usually doing it as like solo or very small businesses, very small groups of people at most.
Yeah, and like I do have a ton of friends in Italy because all my artists are Italian. So like if I fly there, I have couches to sleep on. Like I can surf around the country for no problem. But yeah, it's still, a big expense to get over there and spend time and
Yeah, for sure. It's also the time expense as well. Like you're spending several days to a week or two of your time usually, and it's like trying to fit that in around your other life commitments too. And then usually a few days on either side to adjust for time zone differences and your circadian rhythm changes and things. Have you done much travel? Have you been to the UK before? Have you been to any conventions, just like as a
never
tour?
been uh to Europe or any. I've only ever been to North America. So yeah, I've
Wow.
been to Mexico, the Caribbean, all over the states. But I'm ready to go. You guys figure out
Yeah,
how to get me there.
it would be a big change for you then. For not only first time at a convention, but for first time outside of the states, outside of North America anyway. Let's see. Jeff has gone to Plaid, has said, uh, how do each of you balance family life (brackets happy house, happy spouse) and putting in the hours needed to continue to grow your business? It's a very good question, and if you if you work it out, Jeff, let me know. How do you balance work life and business life essentially?
Ooh, it's been years long work in progress. To be perfectly honest with you, I haven't always done a great job of it. And now I've been divorced for about a year now. And that wasn't like the core of it, but it definitely added, a
Mm,
lot of weight to situations that were happening. So it was like, I definitely had my blinders on, for the 2 years I was working on Banners of Honor. I was literally working, 9 hours a day in this factory and coming home and burning the midnight oil until it was
yeah.
time to go to bed and wake up and do it again. And
Hmm.
yeah, it wasn't like, yes, I always had that goal of I want to be successful and provide for my entire family. And, like
Yeah.
I always had positive intentions, but like at what point do you realize like, oh, my daughters are growing up? You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of it's very important to me to have that balance because I
Yeah.
haven't always, and it has cost me. Um, Now I try to do a much better job of. That's why I like to get up early in the morning and start work, is because I can get 8 or 9 hours in and have the afternoon free, right? So I try to make myself switch off. Right now, I'm not. really ever done working because I'm managing a Kickstarter that's live. So
Yeah, right.
questions, or they're like, hey, you want to do this interview, or hey, you want to cross promote, or whatever the case may be. I'm like, I'm on it. Like, it's my job right now to get eyeballs
Yeah,
on this product. So I'm this month being the exception. I think I'm doing a much better job of
yeah,
switching off and at least taking one day a week off where I'm just like, I'm not working on things. I'm just gonna enjoy my life.
right.
Um, yeah. So
Yeah, and I feel like I'm doing better at it as well, but like it is a tough one. They're off, I mean they're always saying like get a job you love and you'll never work a day in your life, and it's utter nonsense as a
yeah, it's
like
absolutely nothing.
the expression should be get a job you love doing and you'll never stop working. Like that's
Yeah, like
because if you love it you don't know how to turn it off. You'll be working until wee hours of the morning without even realizing it.
it's so important to me. You know what I mean?
You'll be
Like,
taking the work home with you, as so to speak. Especially if you work from home, it's even harder because you don't turn away from the computer at 5 p.m. and be like, well, get in the rat race and go home to have dinner. It's not a change of scenario. It's like this is the life that I'm in.
yeah, and it's very much like when I was in that like a managerial role in a warehouse. When I left that place, I was like, I am done thinking about this shit. I
Yeah,
gotta, you know what I mean? Like, nothing could make me want to think about it.
yeah,
But with something that I'm so passionate about, it's very easy to prod me back into action. You know, somebody's just like, maybe somebody has a complaint about, something that they don't like about my product or something. I'm like, all right, I got to fix this right now. Right.
yeah.
So, whatever the case may be, it's like it feels much more urgent because I'm much more passionate about it. And I hope that that passion will translate in the long run to, a long, successful career
Hmm.
doing things that I love. And, balancing family life with work has never been more important to me than it is now. So
Yeah.
um, yeah,
Yeah,
man, it's
and I think it helps to also just have uh, have your family life and your other life not be two entirely separate things. It's not like balancing work and life stuff as two completely separate entities. Like if I'm in the privileged position that my life stuff is my work stuff, and so yes, that makes it muddled for like when to turn off, but it also means that balancing them is a lot easier because those two things on the seesaw are much closer together. They're much closer
yeah,
to just like a homogenized thing in the middle of the thing that the teeter totter that you're trying to actually balance. Um,
about
like my
context.
my partners are in the industry as well. Like I am in a position where they understand the work that I'm putting in because they're also putting in the same work. They understand what I'm doing, and when I do finish my work and I do talk to them or we have a date night or whatever, there's much more connection. There's much more understanding of like I don't have to start from a much lower level to get them up to the context needed to explain what I've been doing for my day. Like, hey, how's your day been? I can just start with talking immediately about streaming and this and that and the other, and there's that understanding there already because we're all in a similar industry, as it were. Um, so yes, it's tough. Happy balanced life, Jeff. Balanced family life and hours growing the business. I mean, you just got to keep doing what you're doing, and you're going to keep making mistakes, and you learn from the mistakes, and you try and get better at not making those mistakes, and recognizing all of the platitudes. Like if you don't schedule maintenance hours, your machines will schedule it for you. All that stuff, and burning out, and all the things that people tell you about how dangerous it is to burn the candles at both ends and all this stuff. And
Yeah,
eventually,
yeah.
some of that starts to sink in, and you start to
There's,
actually
there's definitely
pay attention to it.
there's definitely a cost to things. You know what I mean? And you just
Yeah,
like,
I
yeah,
like to think of it. There's an analogy that CGP Grey used in a video years ago that I watched and I really enjoyed, or it might have been during his podcast. And he was talking about how he views things as like a lighting board with like just one source of power to it, but several light bulbs. And so if you turn one of the light bulbs way up, the others will dim. And so you can only have one light bulb burning for at full brightness for so long before it burns out. And so like he tries to notice, oh, this light bulb's basically at zero, whether that light bulb's friendships or romantic relationships or whatever, and he goes, okay, I need to put a little more power into that one, which means one of them needs to turn down because there's only so much power to divide between them. And so like, oh, I do need to turn down my work light bulb a little bit so that I can turn up my romantic light bulb and stuff.
Yeah,
I think
dude,
it's an analogy that works for me.
that's been the biggest lesson for me to learn over the last year and a half is that like my time and energy are absolutely limited resources. I have a Google Calendar that I mean it's just like a confetti of color of all the
Yes.
obligations and things that we've got going on. So like
Yeah, I get that.
try to schedule a date or a night with friends or something right now. It's like, what are you doing in 2 weeks on Tuesday?
You're right. You're right. There's so many of my friends that are just like living just 9 to 5 jobs and doing whatever, and then they'll just say things like, oh, they don't anymore so much because they've learned, but they'd just be like, oh, you want to hang out tonight? And I'd be like, tonight? What are you like? Schedule it 4 months in advance, and I'll be able to make it work. But like, I don't have an evening free in my schedule. I don't, like, look at my calendar. I can't just change. I can't just put a thing in at a moment's notice. Fancy asks, how do you paint all the details, fella? Because from one of my mods is called Fella, and she and she out of habit called you Fella. How do you paint all the details, Kefa? What 3 things should somebody focus on?
See, first things I teach in my class are value scale, right? So your eye is automatically drawn to the brightest and most saturated parts of any piece of art or any miniature.
Right.
You get to choose what are the most important parts of this model, right? By painting it bright or by painting it with full saturated color. So if you are painting like a boot buckle, for example, it might be like a metallic, boot buckle. But if you paint it super bright white, you're drawing a bunch of attention there.
Right.
Is that really where you want, the attention on your model? Probably not. So it's okay to leave it like a muted gray, especially if the boots around it are even darker than that.
Yeah.
So value is just a matter of perspective. I will very rarely paint with white. I'll paint with like a ivory or really bright sky blue or something. But based on the value scale of everything around it, it can read as a really brilliant bright white on the.
Yeah. Right.
So yeah, value and saturation are definitely the primary focus of things. And thirdly, I would just say like the most common piece of advice that you hear in miniature painting is more contrast. You need more contrast. And I always tell people like, what does that mean, right? And they're like bright highlights and dark shadows. And to me, it just means creating visual interest. The more ways that you can create visual interest on your miniature, like you talked about glossy or matte finishes.
Yeah.
Use smooth blends, or you can use like rough texture or stippling, or even like pushing or something. You can create temperature changes, right? So like if you're painting your frost giant, for example, you want to use a lot of like cold tones mixed in with whatever colors you're painting. And then maybe for his face, you would do something, a little warmer to draw attention there, to create that contrast, to show the effects of the cold on, someone's skin. I think they're pretty used to the cold, but maybe he's got glowing red eyes or something else, some other color contrast, right? So it's just about creating visual interest on the miniature. I also, day one, like first day of my class, I've got people mixing primary colors and creating their own palettes. Instead of relying on, like the old Games Workshop, here's dark yellow, and here's dark yellow, and here's medium yellow, bright yellow 20, whatever. Like, you can make all those colors yourself very simply, very easily. So I try to teach people so they understand the fundamentals in a different way. Like, I always tell people in my class, most of these introduction classes are going to teach you how to put a base coat on, put a wash over the top, and then dry brush it. And you can learn that in 5 minutes on YouTube. And I would never take someone's money to teach them that. And I really don't think super highly of the teachers that do.
Yeah.
So I try to teach a different set of fundamentals that you can develop into higher forms of miniature art if you choose. I hope
That's
that.
that's amazing.
No,
That's a very honourable, well, to tie it into your whole modules of honour, I guess. No, that is a very honourable way to view it as well. Like, is the thing that I'm teaching, is the skill that I'm going to be teaching people during this class, like something that they could have gotten for a lot cheaper or quicker, more efficiently, just on by looking at on YouTube or something.
or go to the library,
Yeah,
looking at
go to the
you people.
library. What's that?
Just talking about most of the stuff you get from college you can probably learn on YouTube these days.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like if you're gonna pay college tuition to just go and have an old guy with a beard just read a textbook at you, like
Yeah,
the kind of lost track of the times at that point.
we need doctors
Um,
and stuff. So
yeah, we still need them to have that paper degree, unfortunately. Excellent. Let's see. Joe Baby asks, do you have any minis you've never used for any games? You just got them because they would be cool to paint, but you had no reason to actually use them. How many? And then second question: how many minis do you think you have?
so most of the minis I paint these days are not for competition. I mean, sorry, they're not for gaming at all. They're for competition only. So I paint things with the purpose of like putting them on a display base that's custom built
Right.
and it's literally just to show off the art. Um, so yeah, that's the majority of what I paint these days is stuff that never sees the tabletop for gaming. And how
My
many miniatures?
my friend Mike always talks about how there's different styles of like it's different styles of minis, different style of mini painting in that it is either going to be something that is going to be an under like a macro lens photography, like it's going to be a display piece, or it's going to be a piece that I'm using in one of my Viva games that's going to have like cameras zoomed in on it and stuff. Or whether he's talking about, I can't remember the terminology he uses, but like good from 2 feet essentially, and he like table ready, and he says like minis, like if he's painting a bunch of stormtroopers that are just for his own home games that have to look good from about 2 feet away, because that's when you're looking at it on the table, and it's a very different approach that he gives it.
100%. Yeah, that's always the rule is you want it to look good this far away and then you want it to look even better up close.
Yeah, nice. How many minis? Give me a rough estimate, even ballpark,
I
order
would
of
say
magnitude.
probably like 1,000.
About 1,000 minis, give or take. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'd love to actually
yeah.
do a check of mine. So I recently cleared out all of these cabinets. This is my cabinets when they're empty, because this is I basically kept all of the ones that are basically size category gargantuan or huge maybe, and I was like, at least now you can actually make out some of them in the background, even more so before I sort of chucked the map behind it. But all of the ones that are regular medium-sized humanoids and things, they're all just sitting down on my dining table downstairs now, and they're filling up an entire dining table. I'm like, okay, well, this is quite a few. This is quite a few minis. Maybe before I do something with them, before I put them somewhere, I'll actually count them all, just for my own interest. Last couple of questions then, and then I'll let you get off to your busy stuff that you're whatever whatever you're doing next to try and get even more eyes onto the project. Fancy asks, is there anything you really hate painting, or anything you really love to paint?
I do not enjoy painting the color yellow.
Okay.
Um, I can do it. Like it's a developed skill that I've mastered over time, but it's still
Yeah.
like more work than other colors. It's my least favorite color to paint.
Why is that?
Um, it just is much more transparent than the other colors.
Right.
So you have to layer it and mix it very carefully in order to build
Right.
up a yellow. Otherwise, it can turn very orangey. It can turn very like peach colored or desaturate very quickly. So yeah, I know some tricks to get around it, but it's I don't know. Sometimes I'll paint things yellow just so I remember how, but I don't love it. And then as far as like my favorite things to paint are always like probably Dark Sword miniatures, D&D characters. I love it when somebody's like, "Hey, I have this character and I need help finding a miniature." Then I get to help pick the thing that I'm going to paint.
Hell
Um,
yeah.
as much as I love, the sculpting that's coming out of all these 3D printed, models and stuff. Some of them are so beautiful and so well done. Packaging and shipping them is not always the best experience.
I was thinking that when you
So
were saying like shipping them earlier, I was like, oh man, I bet you'd be much more proficient in knowing how the hell to handle minis than a lot of people are, myself included. Like the number of times
I
that people send me a mini in the post, I'm like super excited. Thank you very much for sending me the mini. It's one that I've always wanted, and then I open it up and it's like shattered.
Yeah, and unfortunately, you can pack it as careful as you like. I took a package to the post office and I saw her just like yeet it to the back, and I'm like, like I do my best to keep it safe, but
Yeah.
you can't.
I think that's the real reason that they teach us at like primary schools and stuff the egg drop-in competitions. They're doing it to talk about physics, but no, they're really just preparing us to package things for the postal service. You gotta be able to drop this egg off this bridge and have it survive, because that's how they'll deliver things in the future. Just drop kick it across the room. Last question then from Joe Baby is, how long has the longest competition mini taken you to paint? What's been your longest ever paint job?
Probably around 100 hours. And I'm
Oh
working
wow!
on one now that probably is taking longer, but it's a diorama of the four horsemen of the apocalypse.
Oh man,
It's got like a nice display base full of like
yeah,
skulls, dead bodies, and then like all four horsemen. Each one of them is like a little project of its
yeah, I
own.
bet.
So that one's going to take a good long time. I've got two horsemen down and the base down, and then Kickstarter stuff happened, so I haven't been
Yeah,
painting.
yeah. And that's a commission somebody sent you and said paint this up.
That's me trying to snipe a trophy.
Oh nice. I mean, man, you might get it just from the description alone. I bet that's amazing to look at. I want to
But
see I want to see that when it's done.
of course, yeah, yeah.
Awesome. All
Um,
right. Well, we're out of questions from the chat, and I think we're pretty much out of time as well. So give me one last. Where can people find your stuff? Where would you most like to send them to? And then we'll wrap it up.
yeah, if you go to kefastudios.com, it right on the main page has a link straight to our Kickstarter and straight to my newsletter. Those are the two most important things that you can do to support me right now, because obviously the Kickstarter funds are going to fund future projects and also like help me pay my bills after the book is paid for. Everything that we raise now is just helping me survive for the next little bit while I get the next project going. Um, and then the newsletter, it's really important, like I said, to build that community and to help bring my audience with me when I embark on my next journey. Right, I have a couple of things planned that I'm not ready to talk about just yet. You guys do have the Easter eggs that are hidden in the Kickstarter page somewhere, right? Maybe not necessarily on the main page. So I definitely, if you guys start interacting with those, I will have some more hints and things about what's coming next. But we're going to be mysterious for just a bit longer. And other than that, Kefa Studios on all social media. I'm on Threads and Blue Sky now. I am learning how to TikTok. But yeah, Facebook, Instagram, all the social medias. Kefa Studios everywhere. I do have a Twitch channel. You won't see me there probably anytime soon. But you never know. Sometimes, like I do like to, get on and play D&D from time to time. So
Excellent.
uh,
Very good. And if you're joining this from Kefa's audience and you're finding me just for the first time, I'm Robert Hartley GM. I'm a full-time Dungeons and Dragons content creator, a TTRPG creator. You can find me all over the internet at Robert Hartley GM on most platforms, or roberthartleygm.com, my website. So thank you very much for joining me. It's just now occurring to me that I forgot to do my usual intro of like setting up the short rest, like where we were actually having a short rest from the mission.
we were taking a short rest from the first round of the jousting tournament. We were both super
That
successful.
makes sense.
In our,
Yeah,
right?
perfect. Yeah, we did well. Does that mean we're going up against each other in the next round after we've
Could
had a
be.
short rest? Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that.
could be.
I think that
So
the whistle is being blown to signify the next round's coming up, and I'm
that's
putting my
right.
helmet back on. I'm getting
All
my
right.
what's my mount? Let's see.
I'm riding a giant goat, just so you know. Like
You're on a
I'm on a
giant
giant.
goat. All right,
Great
I'm
big.
gonna be. I reckon appropriately then. It's gonna be. I'm gonna be riding a miniature T Rex, and you're riding a giant goat, and it's like, and it's that scene from Jurassic Park, but like
Dang
made more
it.
even. It's that scene where the goats are chained up, ready to be eaten, and it's just made even now. I'm
Right.
charging in on a miniature T Rex, which are apparently terrible at running. They're not designed for running very fast. But so goats probably have the advantage here. All
Joe,
right, so
baby,
as we
thank you for following.
yeah, no worries. As we are arming up, ready for the next layer of the jousting, then is there anyone that you would like to raid into? I always like to give it to my guests as the option in case there's
I'm
anybody
a
online that
little
you
bit out of touch with the
little
Twitch
out of it.
community.
No worries. I
Yeah.
can choose
So
somebody instead then. But thank you very much for joining us, everybody. Let's go with I think we'll raid into Table Story. There we are. Thank you very much for joining us, everybody. Thank you for being here. Don't forget to check out all of the links that we've talked about today. They're either below me on the screen here, or they're below me in the description if you're watching this on YouTube later. Or obviously, you can type in as we've said, kefastudios.com or roberthartleygm.com. We'll hope to see you around sometime. Thank you very much for joining me, Kevin. Very good
thank you
luck. All
so
the
much.
best for the rest of the campaign with it. And let me know when you've finished painting that Four Horsemen, because I'd love to see it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Bye
Very
for now,
kind of you to have.
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Friends, fans, and fine folk, don't forget to comment on the video for the algorithm.